Some people think building corner cabinets is hard, and I know that because I used to be one of them. But the reality is, it's not that hard once you think of things from a slightly different angle. So in this video, I'm going to demystify the making of a corner cabinet. And along the way, I solve my problem of having dirty dog holes, show you my newest tool for problem solving, and have a long overdue discussion about a debate that happens every single time I make a base cabinet video. And if all that sounds like your jam, let's get to it. So if you're new to cabinet building, you might find this type of cabinet to be especially intimidating, and that's understandable. It was for me as well, until one day it just kind of clicked in my brain that a corner cabinet is just a regular square cabinet, but instead of the door being on the front, it's over here on the corner. And you're saying to yourself, well, yeah, exactly. That's what makes things all weird and angly. But actually building corner cabinets comes down to understanding this bottom panel and how to get these dimensions. You solve this and the rest of the cabinet's cake. You might think that figuring this out introduces complicated maths, but defining just 2 dimensions is all you need to do. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a parametric CAD model is worth like a gazillion. Looking at this footprint of a corner cabinet, there are 2 dimensions that determine the overall size of the cabinet. By the way, the software I'm using here is Fusion 360, which is completely free, but by no means do you need that to be able to figure this out. You can always draw yourself a template using a large sheet of paper or cardboard. Okay, the most important and easiest dimension to get is knowing the depth of the cabinets that will be on either side of the corner. In my case, the side cabinets will be 15 inches. So this distance is 15 and this is 15. Keep in mind though that if you want to put this in a kitchen, those cabinets will most likely be 24 inches deep, so this would normally be 24. And the second dimension that you need to know is the distance of your opening. While there's no right answer here, a good starting place is 17 inches. And 17 is good because once you account for the face frame on either side, the actual opening is going to be closer to 14 inches, which is the minimum opening size for a lot of pull-out organizers that you can buy. And once you know the lengths of these 3 sides, the other 2 sides are actually automatically known. All you have to do is draw these out, extending the lines at right angles until they cross and measure that distance. Now, just take all of your dimensions and subtract the thickness of all your plywood sides, and that's going to give you the dimensions of the bottom panel. All right, let's build this thing. Okay, with the bottom panel all figured out, I just cut the square to size and then measured in from each side where the side panels would end. Then I just drew a straight line between those 2 points and there's my corner cut. I think a track saw is the fastest and safest way to do this. You could also use a circular saw with a guide if that's what you have access to. And there you have it. It's a diamond or a Superman logo. But if you are adding a shelf, remember that this front edge won't be covered by the face frame, so it's a good idea to add some edge banding. This stuff I'm using is amazing because it's real wood and it's also pre-finished. All you have to do is iron it on. Since I'm only doing this on this one small edge, the whole thing's complete in like 5 minutes and I don't have to worry about gluing on a hardwood edge and waiting for it to dry. There is one other thing to consider, and ignoring this could lead to a very bad day. These things can get large sometimes, and doorways often aren't. So if at all possible, be aware of any entryway doors between the outside and where you're going to be installing the cabinets. And if that's not possible, there is one other thing that you can do to prevent this potentially awkward situation from happening, which is to just 45 the back side of the cabinet like this. It's going to reduce the overall width, and it's also this back corner space, which is largely unused and not going to be missed anyways. My cabinet's going to be 27 inches, so I don't have to do that on this project, but if you did, it's done just like the front. You're just going to be installing a piece of plywood on the back instead of a face frame. The joinery method for all these cabinets is going to be pocket screws, which means I get to use my new pocket screw jig platform thingy. Well, hold up. Looks like I've got some schmutz in my dog hole. But in the unfortunate event that you find yourself with a dirty, schmoozed up hole, they make this awesome little tool that chucks into your drill and gets rid of any debris like dry glue down in that hole and resets it back to new. Now, my power lock dogs fit again and I can secure my jig to the bench. Speaking of awesome tools, lately I've shared with you guys how I've been leveraging 3D printing in my workshop with the help of the Bamboo Labs A1 combo. I've talked about how without any technical experience, you can be up and running on one of these machines in less than an hour. And with help from sites like MakerWorld, you can take something from digital to physical in just 3 button clicks. And all that's great, but there is so much more opportunity to unlock by being able to bring your own designs to life. So a couple videos ago, I showed in real time how I came up with an idea to make my drawer front installs so much easier for me with the help of free CAD software, I designed these little brackets which both hold the drawer front in place and give me the perfect spacing. And immediately in the comments, viewers were offering up very thoughtful and helpful suggestions on how to improve the design. And so back to my CAD software I went, and I immediately started iterating. And I landed on my latest design. This version of the bracket slides onto the corner of the drawer front, letting you slip the next one into perfect position, aligned both horizontally and with the perfect spacing in the middle, completely freeing up your hands to attach the front to the drawer. No two-sided tape, no screws, and most importantly, no do-overs because your drawer fronts were out of alignment. But I didn't stop there. I also created this spacer jig, which can be attached to the bottom of the cabinet. And that's going to let me set my first drawer front in place perfectly and then work my way up from there with the other brackets. And I do have some other things to share with you that I was able to design on my own. And I have an exciting announcement about these, which I'm going to share at the end of the video. But for now, let's get that cabinet built. I found the best way to tackle this assembly is to attach the two back panels first. They're the largest pieces, and it is kind of a pain to wrestle them into place, but using a couple of clamps keeps them locked together and frees up my hands. Then I can just zip up the back with pocket screws. Next, I like to lay this on its side and add the bottom. This will also bring everything nicely into square. With those three pieces connected, the hard work's kind of done, and it's all downhill from here. No more clamps are going to be needed until we get to the face frame. Now I'm going to flip that upside down and use two MDF spacers to set the distance of the shelf from the top of the cabinet. And man, I really liked how easy it was to drive these pocket screws compared to the usual clamp the heck out of it so it can't move on you. Alright, now I flip it again so I can add the short sides. So if you were hoping we were done with angles, the answer is no, but this is pretty simple. I'm going to add a 45-degree bevel to the short sides that come together to create the opening of the cabinet. See, that's pretty simple to do, and this bevel is going to make a whole lot more sense in just a few minutes. The key here when installing these sides is to make sure that beveled edge is facing inward towards the shelf. Don't screw that part up, otherwise you're going to have a real bad time undoing everything you just did. By the way, if you're wondering why I added so many pocket holes to these sides, the answer is, I don't know. I must have been asleep at the wheel while I was using the pocket hole jig. I ended up only adding screws to half these holes. Anybody want to guess what happens next? Yep, that's right. Flip it. By the way, did I mention this thing has a lot of pocket holes? Sheesh. And yep, here we go again. At this point, I think this cabinet's just trolling me. Oh, well, I guess we aren't done yet. Flip it again. Okay, I have one more piece to add, and that's the corner stretcher on the top. This one's a bit odd. You can't clamp it or press it against anything. It's just kind of hanging out there in the breeze. To solve for this, I just like to employ a little bit of super glue. Now, that's just a temporary fix, but it is going to hold the stretcher in place, which frees me up to drive in the screws. And there you go. 16 flips and 372 pocket screws later, we have a corner cabinet carcass. So it might be a little hard to see this detail on camera, but the reason that I added the 45-degree bevel on these side pieces is because now this forms a perfect right angle recess. So I can build my face frame to sit right inside this recess, and it's going to be flush with the front. So it turns out building a face frame is actually pretty straightforward. So instead, here is a quick list of tips if you want to build one. First, hardwoods should be the material of choice here. White oak, hard maple, etc. Very tough and commonly available. I see a lot of people use poplar, especially when it's going to be painted, but poplar has like 1/3 the hardness of maple and is actually softer than many softwoods. Knock the edge of a dinner plate into that poplar face frame and you're going to have a permanent reminder of that little event. Second tip, for joinery, just use dowels, dominoes, even pocket screws. All of these are perfectly acceptable. I've even attached face frames piece by piece directly to the cabinet with glue and brad nails. Whichever method is fastest and most comfortable to you is the one I'd choose. And finally, tip number 3, if you're painting, build and paint your face frame separately. In the case of this corner cabinet, the face frame and the door are the only parts that are going to be painted, so it's much easier to paint them separately and then install them than it is to mask off the entire cabinet. Off camera, I painted my face frame, leaving the sides and back unpainted so that I can glue the frame into the opening. I added clamps here just because the bottom of the frame didn't want to stay in contact with the cabinet, but you may find this to be totally unnecessary if you have a nice snug fit just tapping it into place. This is why I love having this grid of dog holes in my assembly bench, because I can use a fence like this one from UJK and a couple of dog stops, and it just makes this whole process so much easier. Once that glue is cured, the cabinet is almost done. And here's a look at all 3 cabinets together so that you can see basically what the final piece is going to be. But there is one element still missing, and that brings me to the debate in my comment section that I alluded to earlier. Of all the things in the world that divide us as a society, I never expected toe kicks to be one of them. Should you build the toe kick into the cabinet or make a separate base? And as per usual with people on the internet, the only way to do it is their way. But there's actually a pretty common sense approach to this that starts by answering just one question. How many cabinets in a row will you have? If you're building a single cabinet like a vanity or your design has a lot of interrupted space like dishwashers, ovens, or a fridge, then it's more efficient to integrate the toe kick into the cabinet. In this case, making a separate base for those is literally buying extra material and doing extra work for no gain, because leveling a single cabinet is the same process whether you have a separate base or not. If you have 2 cabinets side by side, a separate base could make sense, but I'd actually consider just fastening those cabinets together into a single rigid cabinet that you can level without needing a separate base. Where building a separate base really starts to shine and you begin to see those benefits is when you have an uninterrupted run of 3 or more cabinets. Now you can focus on leveling the base once, and all the cabinets you put on it are going to be level by extension. This is especially nice when a corner cabinet's involved, like I have here, which is why I made a separate base for them. So while I don't expect the know-it-alls in the comments to change, at least I know that those who stuck with me this far in the video will be in the know. Okay, next I need a door, and I'm taking the same approach here as I did with the face frame, but with one additional step. I need to create a groove down the center of all the door parts to hold the center panel. My sister's kitchen has very simple painted shaker doors, so I'm going to use a 1/2-inch piece of MDF with a rabbet all the way around to make a 1/4-inch edge that's going to fit into the grooves of the frame. This also makes the back of the door flush, which is important for what I have in mind. So rather than putting this door on hinges, I actually bought a pull-out organizer, and I'm going to use this as a housewarming gift. I think this is a great way to use the space in a corner cabinet that's typically where stuff gets lost in the back or the sides, never to be seen again. I bought this one on cabinetparts.com, and it's super easy to install. I did need to add a 3/4-inch spacer to the base to make sure that it cleared the face frame, but other than that, the base just fastens down to the bottom of the cabinet, and the organizer clicks right into place. The door then gets fastened to the front of the organizer instead of the face frame to make it one seamless operation. But I didn't want the organization to end there. These drawers are a little bit large and they're kind of giving off junk drawer vibes. And so in order to prevent stuff from getting lost in the bottom, I went ahead and whipped up a couple of nifty little storage bins. And it's no exaggeration, these took me 5 minutes to create in my CAD software, send them to my printer, and have them in my hands by lunchtime. I wanted to have 2 layers of storage in this drawer, so I also created these spacers which the bins can sit on and slide back and forth. They connect together with these pins, and they've got screw holes in them so you can fasten them to the sides of the drawer. Now I'm making way better use of this space, and I can even print more bins to organize the bottom. And there is one other thing I thought to give my sister as a part of this project, because these corner cabinets are going to end up being a coffee bar. She uses a single serve machine, so I came up with this design to hold all of her favorite brews and keep them right at her fingertips. This took me a couple hours to figure out the best hole size and placements, as well as adding that 10-degree angle to the bottom. But I do love that I can problem solve this by printing out a design, figuring out what could be better, and then making changes all on my own. And that's where I think 3D printing really goes from just a fun hobby to a real problem-solving tool. And I am excited to announce that I now have a partnership that will allow me to offer the physical and digital versions of my drawer front spacer brackets. The STL files are available in my shop right now, and we're taking pre-orders on the physical brackets, which are going to be shipped out in the next couple of weeks. And I'll be sharing all the other 3D print files that I've made over the last couple of videos. Also, if you're interested in seeing the installation process for these cabinets, I will be making all of that content available to my Patreon members. So if that's something that you're interested in, I welcome you to check that out and become a member. I've got opportunities to get free plans, discounted merch, stickers, Q&A sessions, and a lot more. So head on over there. Links are all in the description. I'll see you next time.